Tony Doherty here for our Relentless Momentum podcast, and my special guest today is a great mentor of mine, a great friend, and someone I've just loved having in my life. Please welcome the one and only Denis Pagan.
Melbourne were hit from pillar to post, but you know what? The people who barracked for North Melbourne, who supported them, who played for them, were able to get up off the canvas and come to fight again. And those boys that ran out in 75, they were never beaten. They were hard, they were tough, they were strong. You've got to take a page out of their book. No one intimidated us. We had a mantra, war without weapons. Everyone who ran out put his body on the line. I want to see you blokes do that tonight. I had a look at Hawthorn last week, and I can tell you what, a lot of you blokes have got a bit to answer for. Tonight, you make sure that you're hard at the ball, you're hard at the man with the ball, you tackle and chase, you put pressure on your opponent, no daydreaming, just go for it, you your best shot.
G'day, Denis.
Hey Tone, how you going?
Going good, mate. What time did you get up this morning?
Pretty early, probably closer to 4 o'clock, 4:30, down the track there. Treadmilled my horses this morning, not as early as normal, but still nice and brisk, and you need to have a decent jacket on.
Oh, those winter mornings, and you get out in the middle sometimes with them. What time have you got to start then?
Well, it's a funny thing. You get those mornings where it's, say, 8 degrees and there's a wind blowing. They're a lot colder because the wind cuts you in half. Sometimes you get out there and it's 2 degrees, still frost. It's not as cold. It's amazing.
You're loving it, eh? We'll come back to that, but we're in Brunswick here, not far from Carlton, where it all started for you. You grew up in Carlton?
Yeah, Station Street, Carlton. I lived until I got married. Went to the Lady Gary Kindergarten, which is in Canning Street. Then just around the corner to Lee Street State School. Grew up there, and you know, every time I drive down Rathdown Street and drive past Curtin Reserve, and I see the changes there. You know, with the school holidays, used to spend them playing cricket. The people in charge used to mow a pitch for us and put goalposts in so we could play football matches. It was the best childhood of all times growing up in that area.
Yeah, I bet it was. And you started your footy career at Carlton?
Yeah, played with the under-19s. Well, virtually started off with their under-15 team, which played at Western Oval in Park Street, under-17s, and then got invited to the under-19s and was coached by Tom Brooker, who was a legendary coach. He was a great mentor for me, and I've even got his notes at home now, and we're going back, you know, a long while ago, 60 years ago, and they still make a lot of sense today. Played there, and then Bress came along and didn't think I was quick enough, and he said, "You better have a spell, son." So I went and played with North Melbourne and started off in their under-19s there.
So that's where you met the great Ron Barassi at Carlton?
Yeah, he was coach of the seniors when he first came across.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you went off to North Melbourne to play in their under-19s?
I'd played in the practice games at Carlton, and he said, "Look, we don't think you're quick enough." I said, "That's fair enough." And I went to North Melbourne and played in their with their under-19s. I don't think I'd turned 18 at that stage, and I thought to myself, I was a bit young to be making assessments on people at 17 years of age. Anyway, I would question his judgment. So I went to North Melbourne, played there for 9 years, and unfortunately the same coach came across to North Melbourne and gave me the same leave pass.
Ron Barassi again.
Yeah.
But you met Ron Barassi, you told me you were kicking a ball up against the wall at Carlton. You've got a photo of that?
Yeah, we have. It's funny, you know, how you look at these sort of things. Ron Barassi used to have this exercise where you get about, 8 feet away from the wall and throw it and make sure it bounces back to you. It'd come off at all angles. And I've got a photograph of me at 17 years of age and Ron when he first took over Carlton. And I look at it now and I think, gee, who would have thought the two of us would have ended up coaching North Melbourne?
Yeah, funny how things work out, isn't it? And I know he was one of your great mentors and one of the greatest coaches. You probably took a lot from him, a lot of your sayings, a lot of your hardness and the way you went about it. I think looking back, Ron Barassi, Tommy Hafey, yourself were probably the last of the real hard coaches that had an authority and a set of rules about them that brought out the best in people.
Yeah, look, it's funny. Ron was a very good coach, an outstanding coach. Very simple, nothing complicated. Everyone understood where he was, and he was very fierce. And if you didn't attack the ball, you paid for it. Tommy Hafey was great. He had a bit more a refined of a structure with Royce Hart at centre half forward, and the way that they played with, speed of ball movement, playing on quickly inside from marks and frees in the midfield really suited my thoughts and techniques, and I implemented that at North Melbourne under-19s, and we had an enormous amount of success for 10 years coaching at under-19 level. I think we made 9 grand finals, and I think we won 5 of them.
Yeah, I think you're in the finals every year you played, and a success rate of like 80% or something crazy in that under-19s. And I always think people say to me with what I've done with Arnold and with working with you at the footy and everything, you get lucky. I think you make your own luck. Like that has to be the longest apprenticeship in footy. 10 years coaching the under-19s before you were even considered to be a senior coach.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I still remember someone conveying to me one of the key men at North Melbourne when my name was getting mentioned. Do you think we should consider Pagan for coaching at North Melbourne? And his answer was, never seen an under-19 coach be successful at senior level. And my reply to that is, has an under-19 coach ever been given a chance? So how would you know? But anyway, I got my chance later on, and I sort of, when the under-19s were finished, I was sort of half pushed out the club, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Anyway, I got a job up at Essendon as Kevin Sheedy's assistant, and they wanted me to coach the reserves. And I coached the reserves, and we had a pretty successful year there too, and learned a hell of a lot. And next minute, North Melbourne played in a practice game in March '93 over in Adelaide and got beaten by a huge amount, 140 points. And Paul Schimmer got his marching orders, and they interviewed for the job. And a couple of board members pushed for me, and I think there were 3 people involved in the job. I think Dermot Brereton, Rodney Eade and myself. I reckon Dermot was probably 6-4 favourite. Rodney Eade was probably 7-2, and I reckon I was about 33-1. Anyway, Dermot pulled out of it, didn't want to go on with it, and it was just me and Rodney. And fortunately, I got the nod. Maybe it was because I played at North Melbourne, and because I think Rodney Eade's an outstanding coach, and his record speaks for itself.
Well, I guess that, your history with the under-19s at North, you knew everyone there, you were a big part of the place, so probably knew what you were going to bring to the table. And you went on to have 10 very successful years as a senior coach at North, 2 premierships, mentored and brought up a whole lot of blokes, handled the media. I think you ran it in a very authoritative way, probably the only way you knew how from the way you were brought up. And I think it gelled everyone at the club because you had rules. And I think it's one of the things that's probably lacking now is everybody's able to do their own thing, and there's no accountability and rules and consequences to what they do. But you ran the place, you really, really did, and look at the success you had.
Yeah, it was funny. Things have changed, I suspect, from being when I was a player, from coaches to when I coach. I was an authoritarian coach, kept it very, very simple. We had a simple philosophy, a simple game plan. If you did this, the coach would give you a rap. If you didn't do it, you'd get a warning. If you didn't do it again, you'd get taken off the ground for a quick benching. And if you did it again, you come off for a lot longer, and sometimes even going back to the lower grades. We had some really good boys there who were strong. And look, I still believe, and a lot of people think all you ever did was just cook people. There was a lot more to coaching football teams than that. And, I reckon it was about, a jar of honey in one hand and a bottle of vinegar in the other, and just know what amounts to give to each player, and the ones who need a bit of a bunk up and the ones who need a bit of a kick in the backside. And you work that out pretty quickly. If you've got some talent there, you're going to have a pretty good team, I reckon.
Yeah, I saw it firsthand, and there, people often talk about your sprays and how you give everyone a good cook, and I guess because that's in this day and age of political correctness and everyone having very sensitive feelings, it's kind of been pushed out of the game. And I don't know if the team we had worked with you would be acceptable anymore. But I think that helped a lot of the guys to have structure, to have discipline, and to have rules and know their boundaries. But what people don't talk about is the kindness and the stuff you would do, outside of hours. Like I know when you were recruiting players, you'd go to their matches when they were kids, you'd go to their houses, you'd spend time with them. You know, if you were trying to get someone to sign on, you know, you'd have them over for dinner and Cheryl would cook or make them some scones or whatever it might have been. But there was always a 24-hour job for you. It wasn't just show up at the track, you know, and yell at the players. It was all the stuff you did off the track. And I love some of your sayings, and hopefully you'll spit some of them out. But, you know, one thing when I worked with you at Carlton, we'll go through that, but one thing I always remembered that you said to me, and it stuck with me and helped me a lot in business, is you said to me, you said, son, everyone's got an invisible sign around their neck saying that they want to feel important. And it doesn't take much to give someone a pat on the back or a bit of encouragement and make them feel important. I remember watching you one day, and we were in the rooms at Carlton, he went round and there was old Frankie Finn. He was the boot stutter, old red-headed bloke. He would have been in his 70s and, you know, he was a heavy sort of bloke and, you know, he was like a stalwart of the club. And if the players were, you know, slipping and sliding, he'd fix their stops and whatever. And I remember you went up to him and you said, Frank, I couldn't be a good coach without you because the players would be slipping all over the track. You do a great job. And because of you, I'm better at my job and everything fits. And I remember he stood up and he stuck his chest out and he was so proud. You probably don't remember it or brushed it off. And then with the lady that cut up the oranges, you said, Shirl, you know, if you didn't do this, you know, I don't know what they do at half time after I yell at them. And then the players have come down from the country. I know you're cooking pasta every Thursday night. Thanks for the role you play. And I remember you worked the room and you went around and made everyone feel important. And then you got to me, the old weights coach, and I'd been watching this, so I knew what you're up to. Yeah, and he gave me a compliment about, you know, lifting the spirits of the players when they'd had a bad loss, or get them in the gym Monday and bring them back around. And I always took that from you, and I thought, you know what, it's really, really true. Everyone just wants to feel important. It doesn't take a whole lot. And they're the things I guess people don't talk about when they talk about Denis Pagan. They talk about this, you know, the authority of him and the sprays and the cooks and, you know, having to sack players and bring them in and all that. But the behind-the-scenes stuff that kept, you know, well, particularly North Melbourne, it's such a tight unit, you know, like they were probably the poorest club in the league. They didn't have the facilities. And I remember, you know, when I first got to know the players at North, and they described the gym they had there and the facilities, you know, and some of the other clubs had, you know, plunge pools and, you know, modern facilities and gymnasiums. That, you know, you could open up a gym in some of those clubs. Pro North, there's holes in the floor and, you know, the change room been there since the 30s or whatever. But it didn't matter because you had something there that I think was very, very special. And whatever you did with the players, I mean, if you have a look at how many blokes that played under you have become successful coaches. I mean, there's dozens of them. It must make you pretty proud.
Yeah, look, I think it is. I think that we're involved in football, and I reckon the greatest asset any football club or any organisation can have are the people who work there. It's as simple as that. You get good people, and a lot of the people who work at football clubs are voluntary, and they do it for nothing, for the love of it, and they're the sort of people you want. You know, it's changed now; it's more professional, and I just reckon good people, talented players, it's a recipe for success. And you know, when you say good people, you know, from your admin staff to your support staff with your strength and conditioning and your trainers and your doctors and that sort of stuff. It's half the battle, it is.
Yeah, well, I think too, when people stay at a club for decades, it says a lot about the administration and the coaching and just the unity of the club. And I look at, you know, Harry, the doctor, and Dr. Con after him, and, you know, Roger and his team, the physio and all of them. And you're all still mates. You've had an incredible ride together.
We're very lucky to have people like Harry Unglick, Con Metropolis, you know, Roger Moore, Gordon McDonald, who's passed away, Roger's partner, and all their teams at our football club, they became not only doctors and medicos, they was like father confessors, uncles, priests, school teachers, confidants, mentors. And if someone's kid has got tonsillitis and nothing for them to pop around Wednesday night at, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning and give some medication out and that sort of stuff. And that's what I reckon makes successful teams and organisations, the people who have really got that care and interest facet, and it just brings everybody together, and you want to try harder for those sorts of people.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the success of North Melbourne. I mean, you had two great premierships. Was it 95 and 99? 96 and 99?
96 and 99.
Yeah,
Yeah.
99 when you beat Carlton. You probably should have won the year before, but then you fell into the finals in 99. You know, Carlton, we took Essendon out, who were the best team of the year, and I think that was our grand final, and you guys must have rubbed your hands together, but you won. And premierships are hard to get. I think you don't realise that till it's all over, how hard it is to win a premiership. And some coaches go their whole life without enjoying that success. And you look at the vision of you and Wayne and the team holding up that cup and those moments. It must be pretty special looking back at that.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Tone. Pretty hard to get into a grand final. Pretty hard to win a premiership. I think we were in 7 preliminary finals in a row and only got to 3 grand finals. And one of them, we probably should have been there in 92, but we missed out. Mucked it up, got beaten, and West Coast won it. And I think it was the last one played at Waverley. I'm sure we would have done well there. 92 was it, or 90? 93? It was 93. In 94, we were beaten in the preliminary final, last kick of the day, where Lee Tudor kicked it over Mick Martin's head, and Gary marked it in the goal square and kicked a goal. I'm sure we were the best side that year. In 95. Preliminary final, Carlton were that far and above, better than everybody else, and they deserved to win. 96 was our turn, just happened. 98, we won 12 in a row coming into the grand final. Most of them, all of them were night games, and copped 30 degrees on grand final day, and I think we kicked something like 622 or something like that, missed some goals, and we didn't win it. We could have played the grand final 10 weeks in a row, and I reckon we would have won every time, but the best side doesn't win, the best side on the day does. And we were very lucky the next year, because Essendon was certainly the best side in the competition that year, and Carlton did us enormous favour, beating them in the preliminary final. And I probably think, looking back now, that was Carlton's grand final, and we were able to reap the benefits the next week, being the fresh side sort of thing.
Now, you had some great talent there, some great players. I think you truly brought out the best in everyone. You know, it wasn't just your great players. Of course, you had your Wayne Carey and Anthony Stevens and Corey and some of these guys that were just born talents. But then you had some hard-working players that were just tough. I mean, you had some tough guys there. Glenn Archer. I mean, how tough...
Well, you wouldn't, pound for pound, he's as tough as anyone I've ever been involved in. He was enormous. But you just go through the side. Mick Martin was tough. He wasn't nasty, but he was tough. Had people like Danny Laidley, and Danny Laidley, when he played, he was courageous as anything. And you look at him now and you think, gee, people don't realise. Get a tape at the 96 grand final, see him jumping in front of Lockett. People like Ian Fairley, not a household name, but never took his eye off the ball, tough as anything. Then you got, people like Anthony Rock and Wayne Swass and those sorts of blokes, really talented, but really hard. And Craig Scholl and Darren Crocker, just fearless, may not have been nasty or anything, but, just always a head over the ball, always attacking the ball. The number of times I saw them with tape on their forehead, getting their eyes split open, and you think to yourself, gee, we're lucky to have a side like that, and blokes who were prepared to really have a go. And you look at the talent. I look at, Wayne Carey's the best player that I've been involved with or coached. But you know what, Corey McKernan, when he broke into the team, say from 94 onwards for about 4 years, he was the equal of Wayne Carey. Just so exciting. He played ruck rover in the 96 grand final. He had 2 possessions in the first quarter. I gave him a rocket at quarter time. I said, your knee's right or it's not right, Corey. Make your mind up whether you're going to stay on. And he went out there and he had 29 possessions in the next 3 quarters. It was just outstanding. He probably should have won the Norm Smith medal that year.
He was a bit stiff on. He should have won the Brownlow. He should have won the Norm Smith.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to the 99 grand final when you beat Carlton. Corey McKernan did that. those couple of quick goals out of the centre.
That goal just before half time, when 60 odd metres, it was a super kick. It was, it really
broke us. Yeah, absolutely broke us. And the irony is that was when I started my relationship with the North Melbourne Footy Club. So I was doing interviews at a fitness expo. It wasn't my one. It was previous to me doing my pro bodybuilding or expos or anything. And I was speaking on behalf of one of the sponsors at the Melbourne Fitness Expo, and Corey was sponsored. I think it was Masashi or someone had sponsored him. And I interviewed him on stage. We just kind of clicked, and I said, it was straight after the grand final, so it must have been November after that September grand final. I said, look, I've got a gym down in Brunswick. If you want to do something off-season, get away from the club and do some extra weights. And he said, well, I've had this shoulder operation. I've lost mobility in it, and no one can get it right. And I heard you've worked with a few players, and I was working with a few players then. So Corey, come on down. We're mates to this day, but he kind of turned his physical fitness around. He got back to, because he couldn't even hit a golf ball. What they'd done, they'd reattached the ligaments or tendons, and they'd done it too tight, and he had just no mobility. He was like this. He couldn't lift his hand above his head. So through a series of stretches and rehab and this and that, we got him playing pretty good footy again. And then he brought Jason McCartney down, and I started training a few of the North blokes on the side. And forward wind a couple of years forward, and your time at North was coming to an end, and you got the offer at Carlton. Obviously, you didn't know. We can laugh about it now, but we didn't know what you were walking into.
Gee, it's certainly a black hole. I'd barracked for Carlton as a kid, and my time had run out at North Melbourne in terms of, coached a lot of those guys in the under-19s, and then for 10 years in the seniors, and there was a dispute about money, and it wasn't a lot of money, and had a bit of angst with people at board level and a couple of people within the club, and they made a ridiculous offer to me, which I found was insulting, and I just decided to move on then. And Carlton were at me, and I accepted it. Actually, I've got some great regrets about that, because I didn't realise the situation at Carlton, and you're virtually appointed. Then we got caught for cheating and lost our draft choices and fined $1 million. And if you go back to 2003, you get fined nearly $1 million. I don't know what it'd be worth in today's currency.
Several times more, yeah.
But they were the draconian penalties applied to the club. No picks for 3 years, and the club was bankrupt. I can still remember you bringing weights down there for them, because they didn't have any barbells or any weights at all. And you think to yourself, AFL football, a club like Carlton, how did it happen? And I still remember Ria Collins say, we should hand the keys back in and let the AFL run it. They've ruined the club. And I just think it got a personal between John Elliott and a couple at the AFL level, and they wanted to penalise Carlton and John Elliott. Well, they certainly did that, but everyone, the personal part of it, they all moved on, and it was only the people who were there who copped it on the chin, and it just seemed so outdated and so ridiculous that they punished the wrong people.
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't follow footy, I know, Denis was a highly successful coach at North. Like you said, they made you an offer you couldn't accept, gave you a bit of a hint.
Yeah.
Time to move on. And Carlton gave you a fantastic offer, one of the biggest coaching offers at the time. And I don't
think it was the biggest. I think it was 600,000, which is a lot of money. But gee, in today's, when you think the coaches are getting $1.5 million for that equivalent, it was virtually the same. It was 15,000 less than what I was getting at North Melbourne, and I didn't have a job. Maybe in retrospect I should have not coached, waited 12 months to see what was around, but I took Carlton and it all fell apart.
You took it on the basis that things were rosy. John Elliott was president, we had a great list, we just we're still having a bit of success at that stage, and then the club got caught cheating the salary cap, fined $1 million, like you said, no draft picks for 3 years. We would have had Wells and Goddard and those guys, which you were going there to coach, all excited about these new players. And all of a sudden we had nothing. And it's sort of bittersweet, for me, because I got my opportunity to work for you. I've worked for Carlton all my life, to get the keys to Princess Park and to be a part of it. I was almost oblivious to what was going on, because I hadn't come from a footy world, I come from a bodybuilding world. And so I was just rapt to be there. And it was only later that I understood what you were going through and how bad our list, by about that third year had become, with 3 years of no draft picks. And
it was probably pretty ordinary at the at the start, and I still remember there were people playing in the reserves who were on 500,000, and I was told, look, you've got to get rid of all these people and try and make it professional. And I went there on the proviso or promise that they were going to recruit. You mentioned Goddard and Wells. We're going to get them, and that was going to be the start of rebuilding a good list for a famous club. And when you think of the history of the Carlton Football Club, there's probably none more famous or successful. And unfortunately, it didn't occur. We lost Goddard and Wells, and we had no picks for a couple of years, and then we had only picks late in the round, and got messy as anything, and the whole club fell apart at the seams then, and it was just so disappointing that a strong club had gone the way it had, and unfortunately, it doesn't appear, even when I'm sitting here today, that they're fully recovered from it. They kept on blaming the coaches, and I think it was more to that. I think it was they had inherent problems at Carlton, and I just think, and I've thought about it a hell of a lot, how could they rectify it? Well, gee, I just think they've got to get all the stakeholders, that's players, admin, coaches, board members, sponsors and people who commit financially to the club, past players in one room, and work out some key performance indicators, agree to them, and say, look, we're going to support each other for the next 18 months, and regardless of what happens, we can assess it in 18 months. If it doesn't work out, we can make some changes. But the worst thing that can happen is to become divisive, disunity occurs, Chinese whispers, everyone's bagging everybody, and like it is now, supporters going silly, negative people in the press, the media, they want to get people, ripping up their tickets. They want to hear Carlton high-profile supporters bagging the club.
They want scandal. They love it. I mean, that's what sells papers, isn't it?
Well, that's it. Nail on the head. That's what sells papers. Yeah. The two clubs, Carlton and Collingwood, any sort of news, preferably bad news, Monday morning, sells papers for them.
Yeah, it's very true. But, I've got to say thanks for giving me a shot. Here I was, this big jacked-up bodybuilder guy, and I'll never forget because someone said to me that they've advertised in the Age for a weights coach at the Carlton Footy Club. And I'm like, hello. So I rang up. And I said, what have I got to do? And whoever's on the desk, she said, well, you've got to send in your resume and list your university qualifications, and we'll have a look at it. You have a look at it with the others, and get back to you as to whether you get an interview or not. And I said, all right then, I'll get back to you. And I didn't finish school, let alone university, but at that stage I was training about 10 players, a few guys from Hawthorn, a couple of the Carlton boys, a few of your boys at North, and. I don't know if you know the whole backstory of this. And I thought, well, I'm not going to send it in because no one's going to look at it. I'll get each of the players to write a little paragraph about how positive I am, how awesome, and my range of motion with exercises and rehab, and how none of them had any injuries since they met me and all this kind of thing. And so I went to all of them, from Cooter and Ange and Corey and Jason McCartney, and it was Jonathan Hay and Daniel Chick, and it was a whole lot of guys who were A-listers. I think 6 of my 10 had made All-Australian the year before.
Yeah.
And I said, can you guys just write a paragraph down each? And I went in with, it was 2 A4 pages, just with that on it. That's all it was, just a paragraph from everyone. And I went to the lady at the desk and I said, look, I'm here to get an interview for the weights coach. She said, well, you should have sent your resume in. It closes today. Yeah. I said, I'm aware of that. I said, but it was there was a little bit there that said you had to have university qualifications. I said, I didn't even finish high school. I said, but I'm a well-renowned weights coach, and I reckon Denis Pagan would love to have a talk to me. She says, do you? Anyway, and I think you walked past at the time and you must have had a look at it and said, give this bloke an interview, and off you went. And I still remember the first interview, and it wasn't you, it was, I think it was Cole Kinnear, maybe Barry Mitchell and Ross Lyon, I think. Yeah. And they were a bit half-hearted, and they're looking at me like a big meathead because I dressed down to try, because it was about 110 kilos at the time. Trying to play it down, looked like a fitness bloke, had a little body shirt on, slacks. And they give me the interview and you stuck your head in. Who's this bloke? And anyway, I don't know what you saw in me at the time, but you said, give him another interview. And you sat in on the next one. And I'll remind you of this, but it was probably one of the best days of my life. And we're halfway through the interview and you looked at the other two on the committee and you said, listen, he's getting the job. He's our new weights coach. You can continue with the other interviews to entertain yourselves, but that's that. And he walked out.
You don't remember that? Gee, it's amazing. But look, you undersell yourself. You were ducks at the School of Hard Knocks. You didn't have to have a university degree, I can tell you. And so often in life, and we've got organisations full to the brim with qualified nuff-nuffs, so to speak. And, you wanted someone practical and someone who could do the job. And I can just, vaguely what I can remember about it, you were prepared to do that. You were going to work hard. You had a great personality. And the thing that hit me at the interview, I reckon, was how positive you were. And even to this day, I've never seen you negative about anything. No. And, you've had plenty of kicks in the bum like everybody. And you've always been the same. Your personality, your temperament, just is on a level line the whole way through. Not many people can say that.
I appreciate that, Coach. But, it was great working under you, and I was at a stage where I probably just needed a bit of leadership in my life, and I watched the way you led. And I've, brought a lot of that to my organisations over the years, just watching how you dealt with people, made them feel important. I always said firm but fair. And some of your great sayings, about accepting responsibility. What's that one?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
No excuses.
Accept responsibility. This is something I reckon I learnt off Ron Barassi, one of the things he really drilled into us. And I think of all the people in Australia, and I think of our biggest weakness, I reckon this is it. Accept responsibility for your own actions. Don't blame others. Don't make excuses. Don't have alibis. Fix the problem yourself. And I reckon so many people just want to push it off to somebody else and then bag them and say it's their fault.
Yeah.
And if we all fixed our own problems and took responsibility, I reckon we'd be a much better country, and any organisation that you work in would be much better if they took that philosophy with them.
Yeah, don't play the blame game. I remember, but it was funny working for you because I'd sometimes get ahead of myself, and I remember I learnt pretty early on. I think we'd had a bad loss, and you give them a real good bake on the Saturday, and you said go in and see Tony Monday morning, do your weights. It was a funny thing. We had a real good session. I got them all back, all positive again, ready to run out in the track. And I think I come up and said, I think I did a good job with them this morning. He said, if you're any good at your job, son, you won't have to.
You won't have to tell me. They'll be telling you.
Oh, all right then. But we did have a great success there in a lot of ways. We didn't do one hamstring in that 5 years we were there, with old school weights principles. Nothing out of a book, nothing out of university, but just applying weight training in football. And we developed some exercise that no one else had done. I mean, we used to take that old brown barbell to the MCG, and they do their stretches at half time for their hamstrings. And we never tore a hamstring in 5 years. And you look at how many soft tissue injuries there are now because of
this. Look at Essendon.
Too many scientists, Denis. Yeah. Not enough weight trainers. People who've spent years in the gym examining, movement and then applying that to footy. And I remember we developed a tackling exercise, and we were the best tackling side, even if we didn't have, the list and the talent. They fought hard for you, and that sort of thing. But we had some great fun. And I remember when I first got there, you said weights are compulsory, and the problem I think when we went into Carlton was that they'd had the run of the place. Weights were optional. Doing extra runs or goal kicking was optional. Everything was optional. The lunatics were running the asylum. I think under David Parker and then Wayne Britton, they're all about self-empowerment. And then comes the Storm from North Melbourne and says, right, everyone's doing weights and everyone has to, train this times of it. And we, all the rules and regulations and guidelines, and everyone needs, barriers and boundaries. And I think you brought that in. Geez, some of them didn't take it too well. I remember some of the players that had been there for a long time didn't want to do weights. And I'd get them in the gym. I could, we have to. I'm paid. I didn't get paid very much. In fact, I would have done it for free, and I just about did. But it was the greatest, for me, opportunity in my life. And to this day, I'm forever grateful for you giving me a shot. But I think you liked that about me because you knew I wouldn't take no from anyone. I wasn't going to take shit from anyone. And Jesus, early on, some of them just didn't want to play. I remember, and some of them I nearly give up on. I remember, Brett Ratton and a couple of the Andy Mackay, and these guys had great success without having to do any weights. And so they'd come in and do the bare minimum. But then there was the newer players who'd see them, and I thought, well, that's why you need rules, because if he can get away with it, then all the others can. I think one of our greatest success stories and joys and just good to see him having a win, was Brendan Favola. And I remember he was an enormous talent, but he was also an enormous personality, and he was distracting, and he'd, cause all sorts. He was a scallywag to train. I remember early on, and he wouldn't do his squats. I said, you've got to do squats, they're going to make you faster. He said, no, they'll make me muscle bound. I said, you've got to trust me. I'm going to make you the fastest player off the mark in the AFL, but you've got to do this work. And he stomped and started, and I grabbed him, I nearly put him into a wall. And I remember he called me into the office and said, you can't get physical with the players, son, just got to find another way. And then, he embraced the program and went on, to be the Coleman medal winner and nearly kick 100 goals in the season, and I think become one of your favourites down there because he always had a go. And, and there was play times he would sulk at half time. And I remember a couple of times you knew that I had a really good bond with him, and you'd just go and sort him out before I drop him, before he's playing at full back again or back to the seconds. Yeah, and there was, I think, that we won some games we shouldn't have won with facilities that we shouldn't have had, with a list that was probably no good. And I've got some fond memories of those times.
Well, yeah, I think in 2004, with the list that we had, we might have won 10 games. And I just can't believe that we did with that list. We missed out in the finals by perhaps 1 or 2 games. But I think, for what we achieved with what we had, facilities, talent base, it just stood out to me. I don't remember a lot of things about my time at Carlton. I don't want to remember them. But, Brendan was a great personality. I'm so pleased that he's done so well now, because he was, when he left Carlton, punting and losing his money, to where he is now. And I'm sure he's got a good setup, and what has he got? 4 lovely girls. And
10 years he's been in radio now. He's the number 1 FM presenter in Melbourne. Yeah, he beats the ratings time after time. And he's just, he's smart in a different sort of way. And I think he just found his niche because he was a great entertainer and a great storyteller, and just almost like a kid in a man's body. Sometimes he'd have that much fun. But so here's another one where he would get all the shit from the media about being petulant, or because he took his footy seriously.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story in a minute about how competitive he was, which I hid from you at one stage. But what people didn't know is how good he was with kids, and how many times he'd go down to the children's hospital without a film crew.
Yeah.
And how many times he'd go and visit a supporter's kid that was doing it hard. And people never knew that about Fev, and he didn't need him to. And I really admired that he could, he was never doing anything for the accolades. He lived in the moment, and if someone needed a chop out or a hand, or particularly with kids, he was amazing. He was like the Pied Piper. They'd come and he'd stay after footy and have a kick with them. And he didn't call a press conference or get the media in like some of our latter players who perhaps structured a lot of that stuff. But I remember one day, another great talent we had, and I think if he had played in a better side, had more support around him, he could have been anything, was Andrew Walker, who was probably, in a way, one of the most gifted athletes, and I've trained thousands of athletes I've ever trained, because he was one of the few that had the fast and the slow twitch fibres. He'd win the 3K time trial, and then he'd win the 100-metre sprint, and normally you're one way or the other. He could run all day. He took Mark of the Year a couple of times. His vertical leap was better than anyone's, and he was so competitive. And I remember one day, we did have some good blokes there. Danny Blake, remember the boxing? Danny, he was there at the same time I was. Yeah. He was a fantastic bloke, and he'd always check in on me post-footy. We got the arse the same day, just about 2 days after you.
We all did. When you think about Andrew Walker, you think of that first game he played against West Coast. Just outstanding. I see his son's a very good player, and I'm sure Carlton will make a beeline for getting him around I don't know if he's available next year or he's at the right age, but the people who rap about him.
Yeah.
You mentioned Brendan. He had that infectious personality. And it's no coincidence that he's doing well now. He always had the ability. You've only got to cast your mind back to Adelaide Oval when he took that mark on the 50-metre line, where three or 4 points down, and he kicks a goal from the boundary. It's probably the best kick I've seen, best pressure kick I've seen. And the mark that he took and won the game for us, I'll never ever forget it. And I reckon that might have been in maybe 2005, I reckon somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But just
Fev's kick was ridiculous. I remember when it crossed the face of goal, the Adelaide Oval, and it did a left turn mid-air and went straight through the middle. I never seen anything like it.
No, exactly. It was special.
Yeah. Anyway, this day, Brendan and Andrew were in the boxing ring. Well, we're called a ring. We'd stuck 4 posts to the wall and put some rope around them. It was literally just rope. We didn't have turnbuckles or anything like that because we didn't have any money. And we called it a boxing ring. It was wouldn't have been 4 by 4 metres. It was 2/3 of the size of a proper one. And they wanted to have a wrestle. They were doing like WWE wrestling. They started with boxing and wrestling. Anyway, we went through all the players. It was a bit of fun. I think we had a loss. I was trying to cheer them up. I just wanted to get it on. And Andrew and Brendan got in that ring. And we're doing 3-minute rounds. And they went at it like they were going to kill each other. And I had to drag them apart over and over. And they wouldn't get out. And I think 7 rounds in, I'm like, they've got to play footy this weekend. Someone's going to tear, dislocate their shoulder or bloody rip their bicep off. They went at it, and there was no hate. It was just neither of them would quit. Either of them would prefer to die than to have lost that day. And in the end, I had to get a couple of blokes to grab one. I grabbed the other one and separate. And that's how competitive those two were. But I think that's what was important to keep Fev, up and running too, because he'd infect the whole side with his antics and everything else. And and Eddie Betts, another great success story there. Geez, what a great little player he was. And I think when he first came to the club, and he didn't fit in that well, and I think he was drinking a bit. He was a bit lost with his mates, and I think getting dragged back into that lifestyle. I remember one of your assistants, Tony Liberatore, took him under his wing. He'd go and pick him up through the Christmas holidays and make sure he was on track and take him for a run. It was his first season. Then the next season he come out and he's become this superstar. How good was Eddie?
Special player. He came to the club. He was hadn't done a lot of training and overweight, but he really had talent. And you look at him now. You look at some of the goals he kicked at Adelaide and some of the unbelievable footballer. It was so sad when he left Carlton. He's done so well for himself in life and TV commentator with Foxtel and Fox Footy, I should say. And he's really killing them.
He really has. Just a good bloke too. Just he's someone we just saw grow into this amazing, inspiring man. And he's a great dad, and he's been great for his community and great for footy, and he just cares, about that next generation coming through. So I've always, as you said, I'm always positive. So I always just think about some of the fun times we had there and some of the wins we had. And as a kid, I was never good enough to play league footy. So one day I remember I said to you, Coach, I reckon, we've got to do a bit more work with the tackle bag before the games. I used to have them real warmed up before the games because to me there's no point in being half warmed up, the siren rings, and then a lot of players wouldn't start really getting into it till about quarter time. So I'd have a lot of rough and tumble with them before the game. And I said to you one day, can I take the tackle bag out into the ground and we'll have them come running into me full pelt, get all their shoulders and legs warmed up. And it was a two-way thing. One, I thought it might work. Two, I get to go out in the MCG or on Marvel Stadium with a tackle bag and just experience that for a minute. And I look at that, go, geez, how'd that happen? That was fantastic. and we brought out the best, I think, in a lot of players who maybe didn't have the skill. And sometimes you've got to wonder, as a coach of athletes and a leader of men, is it will or is it skill? Because some players defy logic. You get a Wayne Carey, who probably could have been a professional boxer, cricketer, golfer. Corey could have been a professional golfer. They just could turn their hand to anything. Then you get a little bloke like an Eddie Betts, Tony Liberatore, who couldn't jump, couldn't run, couldn't kick, couldn't really handball very far, and wins a Brownlow medal. And it was just pure will.
Desire's the greatest motivating force there is. If you want something badly enough, you can achieve it. Look at Libba, look at Eddie. You look at their body shapes and you think, gee, you wouldn't pick them. But gee, Libba was terrific, sort of having coached him and having him on our coaching panel. He played 280-odd games with the Bulldogs. When you think about it, it's just an amazing. Win a Brownlow medal, tough as anything. He had a wonderful career. You see the bloodlines with his boy. Played his 250 game on the weekend. Great player. You think, gee, there's got to be some good blood in that lineage. And,
and not just skill, just that will. Just there's something inside that just. I remember him telling you, just come along to train and no one else would have him.
Yeah. Well, look, I always believed in him. It's not what ability you've got, it's what you do with the ability you've got that's all important. And from day one, Libba did a lot with his ability. And I can tell you, there are a lot more players, a lot more talented, a lot more taller and bigger that didn't make it. But you look at Libba, he's just a special individual and a special footballer.
Yeah, it's funny because I've seen training a lot of athletes in different sports. I've seen the same parallel in bodybuilding. Some people just got unbelievable genetics.
Yeah.
You know, they walk past the gym, they can eat takeaway food and not train real hard. Their shoulders pop out and they've got big arms just naturally. And they don't always make it. It's usually the ones with those 75% genetics and a big ticker that are willing to diet harder and, you know, feel the pain, embrace it and to love it. And you've got to love it to do that. And I think footy is the same. I mean, we had some incredible talent come through that just didn't have the right heads for it. You know, remember was it Lawrence Angwin? Remember he'd take marks at training that were marks of the year. He'd take them at training and go, what the hell? Why is this guy the best footballer in the league? But it didn't have any work ethic or any kind of desire to push that talent.
He's certainly talented. I wonder whatever happened to him. He certainly could have been special if he had have made a commitment to his football. It wasn't to be, unfortunately. Went off into wherever he did, and I hope he's okay anyway. Yeah,
but it's funny in life, isn't it, that you see sometimes incredible talent, and maybe it's because everything comes easy to them that they just don't. They're not willing to push it that little bit harder, and then the others who have to fight for their spot, they've got some fight in them. And I think, you know, you had that at North, you had it with some of the blokes at Carlton. Now, as you said, Carlton, you don't have a lot of great memories. I know it's probably one of your regrets, but you can't blame yourself. Like, you didn't know what you were walking into. No one did. And I guess in hindsight, when all that happened, you kind of said, hang on, let's have another look at that contract. Maybe get someone else, have a year off. I remember when it was coming to an end, and, you know, I was down there 3 days a week, and the players would all come back here for a feed. And, you know, a lot of them would do their off-seasons here, and it raised my profile enormously being part of your team. And forever grateful for that and the lessons you taught me. You know, and I didn't really have a leader at that time or anyone with authority apart from my dad, who's still there, keeping his eye on me. But I remember he'd call me into the office sometimes. So I'd shit myself. I go, oh God, I'm going to get a spray here. But it was always firm but fair, and then it was over, and we'd get back to it. And we became pretty close over the years, you know, because your fitness squad and your physio squad, we were always there for the entirety, whereas the assistant coaches would come and go and, you know, see what they'd walked into and off they'd go somewhere else and everything else. But I remember towards the end, and I said, how you going, coach? We're going to make it? And he looked at me and he said, dead man walking, son. Dead man walking. I think it was about 2 weeks before your final press conference. And, you know, it's a funny thing, footy, because I hadn't been around footy clubs. I didn't know how brutal it could be, and I really felt for you, but I was relieved for you at the same time. I remember 2 days later, I got a call. They didn't even call me in. Then was Shane O'Sullivan rang and said, just, your stuff's all packed up here, just come and get it. You can take your weights back and you're done. And I rang Danny Blake, the boxing coach. He goes, he just rang me too. He said, come and get your boxing gloves or whatever left here. And that was it. There was no thanks for coming or anything else. I think they ended up bringing a poster down or something years later. It probably got back to them. I was a bit dirty that they didn't even bloody get us in to say thanks because we worked for nothing pretty much. But, you know, one of the greatest experiences of my life, and, you know, the few people that have given me a shot, you know, when they shouldn't, it was you and Jim Mannion in bodybuilding and Arnold with the expos. You know, I think anyone listening, you've just got to have a plan and execute it and put yourself in a spot to win, even when the odds are against you. You know, I probably never should have got an interview, but 5 years later we did. And then we all got the arse same week, and I was kind of relieved. I'm like, oh, I can concentrate on my gym now. That was a lot of fun, but it wasn't real profitable. But it was the life lessons that I learnt from you that have helped me so much in business.
Appreciate you saying that, Tone. It was tough times, and I was dead man walking, by the way, probably from 2 years out, not 2 weeks. Anyway, it was an experience. If it doesn't kill you, it'll make you better. I was sure I regretted going to Carlton, but that's life. You can't do anything about it. And I just want to see the club successful and get back to what it once was.
And I think people need to hear that. You know, it wasn't. You didn't have any hate for the club. Maybe the way things turned out weren't great, but we both loved the club and we all wanted the best for it. But North Melbourne, obviously, that's where your heart's always been as a coach. And just last week, it was a 100-year anniversary, and they got you out on the Oval to do the pre-match speech, which I thought was fantastic. It was like they channeled the Denis of old. And did you think much about what you're going to say, or did you just wing it?
It's a funny thing. The president rang me. We'd like you to do that, and I thought, gee, I spoke to Alistair and said, look, I don't want to step on your toes, mate. If you don't want me to do it, I'm not going to be offended. You're coaching the club. I know what you're going through. He said, no, I want you to do it. So I did it. I scribbled a couple of notes down, but probably a couple of days before, I thought, I'm just going to speak off top of my head like I always do, and hopefully it comes out well. And, your own life lessons are there, and the things you talked about, you just need something a key to open it up again, and it just came back and flowing, and I hope it came across well. And
it did.
You keep your fingers crossed, and a lot of people have spoken to me about it. And I hope the club liked what happened. And unfortunately, North had a lot of injuries that day, and one of their best midfielders, Luke Davies Uniacke, was injured at quarter time, and they couldn't sustain it for much longer than 2.5 quarters, and the Bulldogs ran away with them, but they were a much better side on the night.
But geez, they come out swinging. After that speech, they come out and had a crack, didn't they? It must have felt good. And when you said you hope they liked, I think everyone in the footy world liked it. Seeing you up there, just kind of, I think it just balanced out you as the great coach you were back at the club that you loved. The old shin boners down there, and they had, we thought we had bad facilities at Carlton. It was like the Hilton Hotel compared to what you had down at North in the early days, but they did so much with nothing because of your spirit and your impact and your rules. And I think a lot can be learned from it, Denis. So, the world's a funny place because everyone's so touchy-feely and, no one wants to hurt anyone's feelings. But I don't ever think you were mean or mean-spirited or set out to destroy anyone. You're just firm but fair. Yeah. And people have needed it. So I thought it was sort of the full circle for me to get back up there. And I know, I was talking to Corey about it, and he was rapt. He said, I'm going to be out there. They get all the, the ex-players that have been invited are going to be out there to link arms with the team when Denis does the pre-match speech after they run through the banner. I thought, that's fantastic.
Yeah, Corey was very good there. It was a great night for the club, and to see so many, the 70 premiership players and so many of the past champions, and a lot of them have gone to God. When I first started there as a player, to hear stories about the great North Melbourne people, and when you think back, they got into the league in 1925. Essendon didn't want them in there because they had North Melbourne's recruiting areas of Kensington and West Melbourne and North Melbourne. Anyway, they got in there, won their first game against the reigning premiers down at Geelong, the last kick of the day. But for the next 20 years, they won 8 wooden spoons. A number of times they won 1 game for the year, and no games for the year. How they ever got through it, I'll never know. And the real North Melbourne spirit, or Shinboner spirit, shone through. They always had people there, supporters and members and players who wanted to fight, and they just keep getting their head above water. Made the finals in 45 for the first time, and then a grand final with Wally Carter and Les Foote in 1950, and got to a preliminary final in 58. 60s were really lean when I played. Can remember winning one season, early 70s, won 2 games for the year. Then the 10-year rule came along, and Ron Barassi, and the Super 70s, and then North took off in the 80s. Made the finals a lot, but never had much success. And then the 90s came along, and to be in 7 preliminary finals and finals every year, and to have a good group of players, the whole club was a buzz, and we had nothing. I still remember the first day I came into my office. It was an old portable school shed with about 6 officers in there. I had fruit boxes for seats in the office, and I thought to myself, what have we got here? And I still remember it. I got the job there in 93, and and they offered me a contract. I didn't care what they were paying me. I just wanted the job, 90,000, and I had a job at the insurance industry and coaching up at Essendon, and it was the tally of that was 100 grand. I said, "Oh, look, you'd have to put 10 on, just make it equal." So they gave me 100,000, and when you look at it now, and I think, geez, they got you cheap in those days. But anyway, I didn't care about it then, and it was one of the greatest adventures of my life, and be forever grateful to the North Melbourne Football Club for the ride they all gave us all. And it is a special club. They're going so at the moment, and I just hope they can turn it around because people at Carlton know how tough it is. People at North Melbourne know how tough it is, and sometimes I think it makes you a better person for when you have a bit of success. You handle it so much better.
Well, I think the good thing about North is they stick with their people. They don't turn on each other. I mean, Alistair Clarkson's back there. He's proven himself as a fantastic coach. They've got a great young list, and they're playing some good footy. They've played some really good footy this year, and I think next couple of years, if they keep recruiting the way they are and those players mature, and as we always say with footy, there's no injuries, they could be a finals contender.
No, well, I think I look at it now, and I think the side slowly but surely getting the right combinations in place, bit of experience, a bit of body strength, a bit of toughness and how to use your body and your tackling, it'll come around. And I think within the next 18 months, I think North Melbourne will be playing pretty good football.
Do you miss coaching?
I did there for a while, but I muck around, hobby trainer with racehorses now. Takes all of my time. It's a funny thing in Australia. Once you reach 50 years of age, everybody thinks you're a dingbat, and maybe it's got something to do with the tall poppy syndrome. I think of some of the people who are involved and coaching now, and you think, gee, I'm too old for it now. But you think to yourself, strike a light. I'm sure there are some better people around, but it just gets back to who likes you the most, and you get the job, and it gets back to opinions, and everyone's got one. You do well. It's a W&L business. If you win more than you lose, it doesn't matter whether you can coach or not.
Doesn't matter if you're 75 years of age. I mean, you went back into coaching now and won more games than you lost, you'd be a genius. You'd be the greatest coach that ever walked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing to do with age. It's a funny thing. You got out of footy, went into the media for a minute. It wasn't your caper at all, was it?
Did it for 12 months. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't serve any purpose. Being critical of people. I reckon the way it is now, there's too many journalists and not enough stories, and it's just so hard. It's so cutthroat. If you're going to stay in it, you've got to make yourself controversial, be sensationalistic, and come up and be critical. And I don't think that's my cup of tea. I'd rather let others who want to do it, and they certainly do a better job than me. But it's a tough caper as well. Just happy I had a good run at it. But there's in football. With most people who work there, like with coaches, there's only two sorts of coaches: those sacked and those to be sacked. And I think you can nearly apply that to everybody who works in football, regardless whether you're doing a good job or not. It's whether you're winning or losing. And how do you define what is a good coach or a good football person? Very hard to sometimes do it, because I reckon players make coaches. Good coaches make premiership teams. And you can't win without talent. And, I feel sorry for some of the coaches that are out there now, and probably a perfect example is Adamuzze at Richmond. I reckon he's done remarkably well, but haven't got a great talent list at the moment. Sure, there's some good young kids, but I just reckon he's doing a good job.
Yeah, I mean, you always said to me that if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, because it really is a tough caper. I don't think people realise just, everyone wants to be a senior coach, and I think sometimes the assistants get it easy because they don't have to take the rap. But I know both at North and at Carlton, you'd handled the media really, really well. You'd always get up and you wouldn't blame the players, or back to your old saying, accept responsibility, don't make excuses, no alibis. And you'd get up and you'd say, look, the buck stops here. So if anyone's got anything to say, let's get it off your chest and we'll move on. And I used to love some of those press conferences, because, you're hurting after a game. If they want to have a stoush, they'd get one. But I think you handled it all pretty well. But I've sort of had a great advantage with you, because when we finished at Carlton, I said, well, I'll give you a membership, come down to the gym, you've got to keep training. And I don't think you've stopped since. And I've been able to sort of be a part of all your different careers. And I remember the media, that year you did the media, I said, how's it going there, coach? I've always called you coach. And you said, it's not my caper, son. I don't like potting people. And if you've got to be any good at it, you've really got to be laying the boots into someone, and it's not for me. So then you've gone into real estate at what, it's close to 70? You've gone and got 70? Were you 70?
Probably might have been, but I've been in real estate for what, 15 years. I reckon I might have been 62, 61, somewhere around there.
Back to school?
Back to school. Nearly killed me to get a tertiary qualification so I could run a business. I've done that. I'm trying to sort of encourage my son to take over. He does a terrific job with it. I just got to find him a good financier who'll lend him the money to pay me so I can walk out of it. And that's what I'll do. And I'm just going through my second childhood now and mucking around with the racehorses.
Now, you played that down a little bit, but you were, I think, the oldest bloke and first time trainer to have a Group 1 winner back when you started. But you went and got your licence to train horses in your 70s.
Yeah, it was pretty...
You talk about getting old, you've got to stop it, because I think there's still more adventures and who knows what's going to be next for you, because you just keep reinventing yourself and doing it. And you had a great success early on with the horses.
I was very lucky. I had a Group 1 winner after I'd been training for probably 3 months. Very, very lucky. Haven't had much luck since. I've just applied for my jumps licence, so I've got a horse that I think it can jump, and it's I've done all the study and passed the modules, and I'm taking him to Traralgon tomorrow, and he's going to school and see if he can get his ticket, and we'll see what happens from there. And there are always new things to do and to better yourself, but at the moment I'm enjoying things, and I get out of bed each morning with a different injury and sore spots here, and I've ripped my neck at the moment. It's killing me, but there's always someone worse off, and one step in front of the other. That's the most important thing. And put a new bag of fruit on. It's amazing how all your injuries get better.
It is, mate. But I don't think I've ever seen you as happy. I think this horse training's, apart from super early starts in the middle of winter, and ones that run backwards occasionally, they don't answer back. They don't create scandals. They don't get you on the front page of the paper for the wrong reasons. And you seem to have a great affinity for training the horses, a great love for the sport. Are you enjoying it?
I really enjoy it. It's a tough caper. It's tougher than anything I've done. The horses are magnificent animals, very unpredictable, and they can be so dangerous. You just got to be on your wits all the time. 600 kilogram beast. They can spin around and really kick. If they really double barrel you and give you a kick, they can knock you into next week. And so many people have been injured or even worse. Yeah. Unfortunate accidents. So you just got to be careful all the time. And at my age, I think to myself, geez, you've got to be really careful. And that's what I do. I hope I'm smart enough to keep concentrating and don't ever lose, your built-in safety mechanisms, because it's dangerous. But gee, it's a great sight to see them in full flight, galloping down the straight. You just hope you can find another good one, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and still training, coming to the gym just about 3-4 times a week. And if I don't see you, you're going to get a call.
Yeah,
okay, come
exactly.
on, coach.
Well, look, I was doing that. I've dropped off a little bit the last 6 weeks with so many things on, but I would have been at the gym this morning, but we had this interviewed, so I'll start again tomorrow, and get back to 3 or 4 sessions a week, because it's amazing. I like the good life and good food, and I like a nice glass of red, so I'm going to get back and get fit again.
Well, it's all about the balance, isn't it, Dennis? And it's funny how people connect, and our lives all come together, and we have this common thing at the gym where we all have a yarn, and there's some good footy people here, and some people, as you know, from all walks of life. I was lucky enough to have you. When I was at Carlton, I remember I had my 40th when I was at Carlton, and a few months ago you came along to my 60th with Cheryl. Yeah. You made a lovely speech, and I was very grateful for that. But geez, that 20 years has gone quick, hasn't it?
Has it ever? Your whole life passes in front of you. Same with your career, what you like doing. that's why you got to enjoy it and hope you can just keep going. You're fitting well and a little bit longer. That's what I hope to do.
Well, I hope so, mate. We've got to keep you fit. And I don't know what'll be your next adventure, but I'm sure there's still more to come in the Denis Pagan story. It's been a hell of a ride, and just a privilege to be a part of your world for the time I was. And I'll be, as I said, forever grateful for the lessons you taught me, which I think got me through some real tough times in business, with loss and, the lockdowns and all this. And I always went back to some of the principles that, I learned as being part of your team. And I think all the players, as I said earlier, that played for you, that have gone on to have successful careers and to be AFL coaches, I think, mate, they broke the mould when Denis Pagan left footy. There's no one like you.
Good on you, Tone. Appreciate you saying that.
Well, mate, thanks for coming in for a chat. I'm sure people will enjoy this and, some stories we haven't heard before. Anything to finish off with?
No, look, thank you for looking after me, coming to the gym, and you motivate me. I know I've got to do it a bit more. But thanks for your friendship, Tone, and I keep singing your praises wherever I go. You're the most positive person I know, and your personality never changes. And I think it's one of the greatest traits anyone can have. And someone in business like yourself, I'm sure it's doing you all the pleasures and enjoyments and excitement you deserve.
Thanks, Coach.
Tone.
Thanks for coming on.
No worries, Tone.
Relentless momentum. We're out.